Hello and welcome everybody, it's Karen. I've got a little interactive card to share today. So this is the actual finished card. So the one little penguin is up on a homemade wobbler and this other one is tobogganing down the hill. So I am actually using the Penguin Winter Holiday stamp set here. And I've chosen those three little penguins from it. Now, all of this was inspired by this little guy because he's got his winter hat on, but he's got his inner tube, and I figured he wanted to go tobogganing. So all these guys are out playing in the snow, having fun. So I'm making a 5.5-inch square card, and I've used, this is actually just contact paper, but any masking paper would work. And I've, as you can see, kind of made two little hills there. And I've masked them off, and I'm going to do the sky first. So I'm using tumbled glass, shaded lilac, and spun sugar distress oxide inks to make my sky. Now on the bottom part, I thought it would be really fun because it's kind of, there's not a lot to this card. I just thought it would be fun to add those snowflakes to the background. So if I had kept my other half of my contact paper when I first cut this out, I wouldn't have to do this. But I've put my snowbank piece of masking contact paper onto another larger piece, and I'm cutting the reverse of that so that I can mask off the sky. So I'm just going to place that over there so I don't get snowflakes up in the sky. And I'm using my anti-static powder bag. So I've got some Versamark ink, and this is Hero Arts Sparkle Embossing Powder, and it just gives a really pretty glittery look, which I thought would be fun for snowflakes. So I've stamped that on, and I'm just going to heat set this. And when it's all heat set, it looks like this, which I think is really kind of fun. It's a very soft look for the background. Now I wanted more, so I'm using the Winter Wonderland stencil. I just wanted to put some trees along that top hill there. I just felt like it was boring without a bit more. So I have got this Stickles glue that I can't even get the lid off. So here I am, I'm going to use it up. So I've cut it in half, and I'll just use that for the stencil. And that is another really pretty glittery product that just looked really quite nice with the sparkly snow. So you can see it there. And then I decided to add more, so I'm going to use the other line of trees there and just very carefully position that beside the other ones because that Stickles glue is still really wet. So I'll just spread that one on and do a few more trees. And so there it is when I removed the mask, and just really pretty, I thought, soft but pretty. So I set that aside to dry, and in the meantime, I am going to make an action wobbler for this little guy. So I've cut 2 circles from scrap cardstock. Now you want your circles to be a little bit smaller than the image that you're going to put them on. So that was just a bit smaller than my penguin. And I'm going to line them up together and poke a hole right through the center of these. So I've just got my pokey tool there, and I'm just poking a hole into them. And then you're going to need some wire. Now the wire on the left is 20 gauge and the one on the right is 28 gauge. And so you can see the difference there. So the higher the gauge, the thinner the wire. Now the one on the left would be too thick to make an action wobbler. 28's about as thin as I would go. Really, I normally would go about 26 gauge wire, maybe 24. But I'm wrapping this one 4 or 5 times around a pen, any tool that's round or Copic marker, whatever you've got. Well, maybe not a Copic marker because they're not all round. But there you can see I've left 2 tails at either end, and I'm just sliding that off, and so I've got a little coil there of a wire spring. So I keep it coiled together, and then I'm going to just take that top tail and bring it up through the center of that circle basically, and I'm putting it right through one of these circles. I know I'm off camera a bit there, but all I'm doing is pulling it up through the center of that paper circle, and then I can wrap it around, and then I will use my double-sided tape to hold that in place. And then I'm going to repeat that on the other side. So you can see the little coil there. And then you just want to bring that tail up through the center if you can. If it's not exactly through the center, it doesn't matter terribly. But I am keeping it all pressed down together. I just find that easier. And then I'll put more double-sided tape on this side. And so when you pull that apart, you can see how that's going to wobble and, let that little penguin move. Now on the left, I've used a 22 gauge wire, and on the right is the 28. And that's just to show you the difference in the wiggle that you get. So if you don't like it to be super wiggly like the one on the right, go with a slightly thicker gauge, a lower gauge wire. So I'm going to remove the release paper on my wobbler now, and I will put my penguin right in the middle. Try to aim for the middle of that. So now that my background has dried, I am going to cut my track for this little penguin to toboggan down. Now, you could use a pencil and draw the track first. I didn't bother, but I have this paper punch. Now, I'm going to be using the same paper punch to punch out foam tape. And so I know my track has to be wide enough to allow for that, that foam tape to slide down. So that's why I've got that there. It's just to mark how wide to make my track. And all I'm doing is I'm drawing a line sort of down the hill, and then I do a little dip and over again. Now, you could make your line straight. You can make whatever shape you want, but that's all I'm doing there. So if it's easier to draw it out or to have a ruler or something that you use, a curved ruler, go ahead. But I've cut another or punched another circle at the bottom, so I know how wide again to make this. I would err on the side of making your track a little too narrow, because it's easy enough to come back in after with your scissors and trim it out, and you'll see me do that in a minute. So I'm just eyeballing this, trying to make sure I've got it about the width of that paper punch. And just going right back up to the top and around that track. So then you can remove that. And then I'm just having a look at this, and I can already see there's a few areas where it curves that weren't terribly smooth, that I thought that my little penguin might get caught up on. So I'm just trimming that out. And then I will cut 2 circles with that same paper punch from my foam tape and stack those up together. So they get stacked one on top of the other. And then I've got a penny there that I've put that foam tape on. Now, I actually like to use 2 pennies, so you'll see me do that here. You don't have to use 2. You could use 1 and put your penguin image right onto that foam tape from this point. But I've put that penny in behind that track, and I'm just making sure it goes down. But the extra penny gives it a bit more weight, and I find it really flows much more smoothly with the 2 pennies. So I find this the easiest, most effective way of doing these interactive cards. Now, my pennies did not go down that track very well, so I'm just playing with this until I'm sure it's going to easily go up and down. And so you can see there it was moving really well. So then I put some double-sided adhesive tape onto the penny, and then I can attach my penguin. So on he goes, and he can toboggan down the hill now, once he's loosened up. So he moves really well up and down. Now on the back, I've put 2 layers of foam tape. Now you have to avoid that track. It's actually where the penny is that you have to avoid. You don't want the penny impeded by any foam tape. So just be very cautious around the track. But I've removed the release paper, and I'm just putting this onto a 5.5 inch card base. And you can see I had taped my penguin to the top there. It was just easier to have him in position rather than moving around as I put that foam tape on the back. So then you want to make sure once everything's pressed in place that he can still move, that there's nothing impeding his movement. And you can see he's fine. So then I glued the little girl penguin down at the bottom there, and I was trying to make sure she was well glued because I didn't know if that little tobogganing penguin was going to hit her. He goes pretty close. I think he misses her though. And then this is my little action wobbler, so I'm just going to add a little bit of glue to the sides of that cardstock just to help hold it in place a little bit better. And I'll pop this little guy up to the side. So I'm basically trying to keep everything away from that track where that little spinning penguin goes, because you don't want him impeded by anything. Now, on my computer, I created most of this sentiment, but I've used the joy from the stamp set. I just didn't have stamps that had this sentiment on it, so I did it on the computer and just added in the joy. And I popped that joy up on a little bit of foam tape too, so it's got a little bit of dimension there as well. And so that's the card, but I tell you, it is so much fun to play with that. Like just watching him spin, sometimes he goes straight, sometimes he spins around, just super fun. So I hope I've given you some ideas there, everybody, and I hope you'll come back for the next video. Hope you're having a great day, everybody. Bye.